Welcome to another edition of the Cricket Sadist Hour. I have with me probably, South London's most famous East Croydon cricket legend. It's Mark Butcher. How are you?
Very well, Jared. Very well, mate. How are you?
Not too bad. That was the best I could come up with on short notice. I apologise.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fine. It's more than I deserve.
I have actually been working out ways of getting you out of the podcast for ages because I've often thought of you as a cancer in the podcasting world that needs to be cut away.
Oh, mate. Well, you know how it is, mate. They haven't invented the chemotherapy that can keep me out of your podcasts.
Um, is it weird that Michael Clarke and Shane Watson are about to go into a test match together and miles away in Australia and South Africa? They're basically there's a court case where Mickey Arthur has said that Shane Watson is the cancer of this side and Michael Clarke didn't really want him around, etc., etc. Have you ever been in a situation with something that odd has gone on just before you've had to go out and play?
No. I mean, but to be fair, we didn't need massive off-field scandals to put us off back when I when I was in the team going into an Ashes Test match. But it is extraordinary. I mean, 1-0 down. The sort of the vibe around the Australian team since Lehmann took over from Mickey Arthur and subsequent to their performance in the first Test has been pretty positive, I think. And this is this is the worst possible news for them with a crucial Test match coming up.
I mean, Darren Lehmann, I've been calling it the cult of Buff because he's had so much good publicity, he's had so many good vibes, and the team has, almost come from nowhere, really, to beat England in the first Test. But do you think that this, I mean, what would you do as a coach in this situation? I don't really know how you would even bring that up at a meeting between the two of them.
Well, I mean, it's there, isn't it? It's out in the open. There's nothing you can do to ignore it. So, I mean, I'm sure Buff's way would probably be to grab a couple of cans of beer, or go get all three of them, sit down in a room and talk about it. I wouldn't have thought there'd be any, there's no need for any other sort of reaction. To be perfectly honest, the three of them need to sit down, discuss it, talk about it. Come up with whatever spin they're going to put on it in the next press conference, because that will have to be something they have to consider. Because you have to, in modern cricket, modern teams, modern what do you call them? They call them groups now, don't they? But it's almost like a corporation, a cricket team nowadays. You have to decide what you're going to do behind closed doors, and then come up with the company line and stick to it outside of closed doors.
Do you think that with Dave Warner's history of occasionally flying off the handle, so essentially it was Watson who told Mickey Arthur about David Warner, do you think at any stage David Warner might be tempted to get on his tweet machine and maybe break company policy, if you will, Butch?
Well, Matt, he's on his dog's life, isn't he? I don't think he can afford to do anything of the sort. If I was David Warner's sort of family or girlfriend or wife, I'd just confiscate his phone from him until this tour is over, because he simply cannot afford another misdemeanor. Because I'm surprised. He's been sent off to South Africa to go and play cricket, which is a little bit modern day gulag perhaps. Been sent been sent off down there.
You mean the A tour and not South Africa, yeah?
Yes, what I mean, yeah. Of course, that's what I meant. I've lost my thread now. But he'd simply. I'm surprised he's still on the tour as it is. Albeit he's on the A tour. Let alone another sort of spat from him. That'll probably be the final straw.
It seems, and me and Gideon have done so many podcasts about Watson and sort of inferred that there's so many problems without being able to come out and save them. We aren't suing anyone, so I suppose it was hard for us to say.
Right, so what you're getting at is that you feel massively vindicated, and you're puffing your chest out going, see, told you so, told you so.
That's exactly what I'm doing. But what I actually was trying to get at, and I think I talked about it recently as well, is how similar the Shane Watson situation is now to the KP situation.
Yeah.
I mean, we now know that the main player and the captain don't like each other. We now know that Shane Watson feels so upset by the way he's been treated, he's willing to grass in one of his teammates. We know that the coach obviously also was having problems, and the management in general. We know Pat Howard's already come out and said that Shane Watson plays for himself. In so many different ways now, Australia's just created their own KP situation, except without the one small thing, is that Shane Watson still does not win Test matches for Australia.
Well, yeah, that's it. That was my point exactly. That Shane Watson's not anywhere near as important to Australia as Kevin Pietersen is to England. Simple as that. I'm sure they can go into state cricket and find a bloke who'll get 40 off 30 balls at the top of the order and stand there whinging at first slip. So he's not irreplaceable. Kevin Pietersen's situation, yeah, I mean, I think England in the end, handled it pretty well. Whilst it was all going on, I thought it was pretty ludicrous. But in the end, you know, a new captain, Cook, comes out and goes, listen, we're going to India. If we're going to win India, we need Kevin Pietersen, and that's it, all sorted. Everybody loves each other again. And KP won him a test match, didn't he, single-handedly? So, you know, there's your main difference. One guy wins test matches, the other one not so much.
Shane Watson's pad, that front pad. If you bowled a little bit of medium pace in your time, would you back yourself to be able to hit that massive target as he just keeps plonking it in the same place, ball after ball?
Well, I'll put it this way: I'd have tried when he first walked to the wicket, but what I would have been doing bowling at him when he was on naught, I don't know. But unfortunately, being that he would probably be on about 40 or 50 by the time I did get the chance to bowl at him, he'd have met it halfway down the pitch and hit it 40 yards over my head. So I don't.
I don't know. I think you're selling yourself short. If he was on 40, anywhere between 40 and 100, you had a chance of getting him out.
No, you're right. Actually, yeah, I've got no chance if he was on 15.
Exactly. I want to talk about Jimmy Anderson for a second, and I want to give you a hypothetical. Okay, so let's say there's a warm-up on the day of Lords, and they're all going around the ground, and someone leaves a cricket ball out where it shouldn't be left. Jimmy Anderson trips over it. Does that automatically make these two teams pretty much even?
I wouldn't say even, but it doesn't half hamstring England. You know, I still think top six for top six, England win that particular battle. And on the bowling front, yeah, Jimmy's the difference between the two bowling attacks for sure. Yeah, I mean, put it this way: if I was England, I would make sure that Stuart Broad and Stephen Finn, should Stephen Finn be in the side on Thursday, literally carry Jimmy Anderson around in one of those sedan chairs for all of the warm-ups and make sure that nothing happens to them, because Jimmy did the equivalent of that for them in this test match. He bowled all their overs, he took all the wickets, he basically won the, it was a one and a half man bowling attack that beat Australia in the last test match. And that's a problem that's a problem for England, but it's a massive problem for Australia. If one bloke can bowl out the cream of the Aussie batting, then Australia have got a real problem.
Would you pick Finn for Lords?
I wouldn't, no. But then I wouldn't have picked him for Trent Bridge either. So,
well, then that's fair.
So yeah, I mean, it's not a reaction. It's just I had my feeling was that Stephen Finn's rhythm and confidence just hasn't been there all summer. He was made to look reasonably ordinary and pedestrian by New Zealand early in the summer. Bresnan was coming back from injury and was getting stronger and stronger in the shadows, in the wings, playing for Yorkshire. And he also bats, doesn't he? I mean, he's Brezzy. There's no way on earth, put it this way, there's no way on earth that Alistair Cook would have been hesitant to throw the ball to Tim Bresnan on the final day of that Test match. Not with the ball reverse swinging. Just, Brezzy superb when the ball's reverse swinging. I've seen him bowl on the flattest pitches in the world in Bangladesh. And make things happen when that ball's got a bit of reverse going. So, you're looking up in the sky around England, around London at the moment. It's red hot. It's been red hot. Amazingly, it's been red hot for about 10 days now. So you've got to imagine that the pitch isn't going to be a green seamer. It's going to be dry. It's probably going to be slow again. It will most definitely reverse swing. Now, under those circumstances, I want to know that I've got 3 quick bowlers who can all handle the ball when it's reverse swinging. And plus the fact that Bresnan is more likely to score you an 80 or a 90 batting at number 8 than any of the other 2 options, which are Finn and Onions.
I mean, when you say red hot, it's about 28 degrees. But I do.
Hey, listen, everything's relative, mate. Don't forget, my ancestry is Jamaica, so I know the difference.
Well, my ancestry is Irish, but
exactly.
I'm still growing up.
No idea.
This is my theory on Finn. I agree with you that he's probably not 100%, but England just see this massive upside to Finn, and they just think, wow, he's going to win us Test matches one day. Because realistically, if he ever fixes his action just that little bit, and if he ever just gets the most out of himself, there's no doubt that he him and Tim Bresnan are two different species of, bowler when it
Yeah,
comes down to it.
agreed,
But right
agreed. But
now, he just doesn't fit, does he? He doesn't
no.
fit the English game plan, and he doesn't fit the fact that if Henderson has to bowl 13 over spells,
Yeah,
there's something actually wrong there, isn't there?
yeah, and if he could, Stephen Finn sort of, or Alistair Cook's lack of confidence in Stephen Finn could cost Alistair Cook his best bowler. You see what I
Yeah.
mean? If Jimmy has to keep bowling everybody else's overs, at some point he's going to go bust. I don't care how fit he is. You can't keep bowling everybody's overs and not get injured. And that would be disastrous. It would be catastrophe for England if that happened. So I think they've got to consider this not just as a sort of a man for man, Finn versus Bresnan, the relative merits. But I think at the moment, as bowlers, I think they're just as useful to Alistair Cook. I think he's got to look at it more in terms of, well, if I can't bowl Finney for an entire session because I don't fancy him, I might lose Jimmy Anderson somewhere down the line, and I can't afford that to happen. Simple.
Yeah. And it's interesting that, finally Australia actually has a fifth bowler. I know he had a niggle and, at one stage he was almost on crutches, but then he bowled 15 overs or something, Watson. But it actually helps because it means they can carry Stark if they want to. Now, there is talk that Stark may not be carried for another test, but what Stark gives you, we saw it already, is that he bowls really quickly and he takes wickets in clusters, the same way that Finn does. At other times, he just bowls absolute junk and, you don't want to see him again. But it does give them that option that England just don't have.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. It's a four-man bowling attack that England have. Okay, Joe Root might bowl a few overs, but you just can't afford the luxury of a bowler that, yes, you might take three for nothing in four balls, but then who you're not going to bowl for a day and a half because you don't fancy him bowling it in the right spot. It's not a luxury that England can afford with their current lineup. Somebody tweeted me the other day that said, what about Ravi Bopara at 6? Because he bowls a little bit, and I'm kind of thinking, well, that Ravi's obviously confidence is through the roof. He had the Oval chanting his name the other night in the 2020. He had a really good ICC trophy, and his bowling is useful. Is it Test match standard? It's not as good as Watson's, but it's an option, I suppose. I don't think England will change Bairstow, well, not at least for this Test match. I think they'll probably give him, they'll give him until they probably give him the series as long as the team's winning. Johnny Bairstow. So you're right. England cannot afford a stark luxury with a four-man bowling attack.
Stark luxury, I do like that. Wait, just let me mentally remember that so I can put it in the title. I'll talk about Bairstow in a second. I did find it interesting at times that maybe not in the second innings, but perhaps when the tail was going so well that Trott wasn't bowled. But just for a couple of overs, just to see if Agar would get so excited he'd try and slog him over, over to the McDonald's. But
Root, like you say, Root is another option under those circumstances because there's one thing, he batted wonderfully well, but let's not get carried away here. As a player, he'd be a handy number 8, I think. I was watching him bat in the second innings and seeing how he sort of shapes up against the quicker bowlers. The back foot disappears off towards square leg and he gets himself away from the ball in order to free his arms up, which is it's a lower order batter thing, So let's not get carried away that he's suddenly going to be a number 4 that bowls a bit of left arm spin because he's got a long way to go for that. And in the case of sort of lower order players, in the case of young players, you get a part-time offie come on. Two things can happen. One, the batsman absolutely craps himself because he thinks, I can't get out to this bloke. Or two, he fancies him so much that he has a massive wind-up and hits one straight up in the air. So, yeah, you're right. It is worth it every once in a while to bowl your sort of part-timers at guys who are not regular batsmen.
Well, let's talk about Agar more then. So essentially, the way I see it is, regardless of what Michael Clark said, he's probably not the best player of spin of recent times in Australia. I think Damien Martin was pretty handy. And Michael Clark himself is probably not the worst.
Darren Lehmann was pretty bloody good too.
Lehmann's not too bad. And let's be honest, he also got Swan on a pretty bad day. In fact, in a pretty bad test match in general. I think the best they can hope for from Agar, at least over the next 3 or 4 years, he's so young, we have no idea what he's going to be like when he's 25, 26, but over the next 3 or 4 years, the best they can hope for is that he can bat at 8 and strengthen the tail and give a few overs, and maybe give them the option to bat an all-rounder at 7 as well and move a wicketkeeper up the order. But realistically, that's all he is. He's essentially a slightly poor version of Vittori right now, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot to work on with his bowling, but there's not. But action-wise and everything, he looks pretty sound. You know, I think he would develop into a very handy left-arm spinner for sure. He could even become a very, very good one. But you know, to pin your hopes on a 19-year-old that's barely played any cricket to bowl out, you know, an England lineup that won a series in India. Let's not forget. Is a massive ask on the kid, and you know, amazing to watch him, amazing to see him smile and enjoy it so much and play so well. I just hope that that's not the best it ever gets. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what it does, if they really want to take a risk in this series, what it does do, and they may not even need to do that with Watson in the bowling lineup, but what they could do is, there's a lot of talk about Eddie Cowan being dropped, and I think the reason he probably won't get dropped from this test is because they don't necessarily believe they've got another number 3 behind him. Otherwise, I don't think he would have played in the first place. So if that's the case, if he could get dropped and Hughes could move all the way back to number 3, although Lehman did move Hughes away from number 3, move all the way back, Haddon bats at 6 and Agar bats at 7, it suddenly gives Australia a 6-man bowling attack, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But then, you know, one of the things about a 4-man bowling attack is that you're always bowling somebody that you want to bowl. You know, when you go 5-man, 6-man, etc., either they're only bowling because your main bowlers are bowling crap, or they don't get a bowl at all. So it's, you know, it's a bit of a red herring to have as many options as that sometimes.
I don't know. I think having 11 batsmen really helped Australia.
I mean, Usman Khawaja made his debut at number 3, didn't he? When Ricky stood down, and he shaped up really well in that Sydney Test match in 2011. He looked, you know, he looked as though he had the sort of technique that could hold down a position in the upper order. I certainly wouldn't move Philip Hughes. I think that's been a great idea to have him come in when the ball's a little older. Okay, he might have to bat against spin first up, but you know, he'll get over that. But yeah, you're sort of sneering at me because obviously you think Khawaja's bloody useless. So
I don't think he's useless. I just, you know, you brought up the magical innings of 37, which was up until Rob Quiney's 9. No innings had ever been so overblown.
Well, I mean, you know, but if you say Ashton Agar had got 40. You know what I mean? The thing that rather than 98, the thing that sort of impressed people watching Khawaja on that was that it was a massive occasion, huge. You know, there was a massive sort of. He was talked up enormously because he was the first sort of you know, Asian to represent Australia and all these other things. So there was a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and he came out and played as though he was born to it. You know, okay, he didn't make 100, he didn't make 90 odd, but there was something in terms of his temperament and technique that made you think, well, he could, why not? You know, whereas you look at Eddie Cowan and you think, why? You know, you know, no disrespect to him. Christ, I know how bloody hard it is. I made it look as difficult as anybody at times. But you know, he kind of you match the two of them up, and you just think, well, Test match cricket wise, you know, one guy's got a technique that looks like it will stick, and the other guy doesn't.
What is interesting though is the reason Usman was dropped in the first place is he never went on from that 37. In fact, he never really made any more runs. He never even looked that composed again after that time. And the reason that, you know, Eddie eventually came into the side is because, you know, people like Phil Hughes and Usman Khawaja couldn't take their chances. I mean, that's why they're even there in the first place.
Yeah. Well, he's in the. All I'm saying is he's in the squad, isn't he? I mean, if he's not, if they don't think he's good enough to play, then they shouldn't have brought him. They shouldn't have brought him and 20 other people. I mean, how big a squad is that?
Well, I think at the moment, I'm in it. Gideon Haigh made his first 100 in club cricket recently, so he's in it. And Malcolm Conn, unfortunately, doesn't qualify. Because
what about Crash Craddock? Can you get him over?
Well, he's not over here. Otherwise, he'd be in. Chloe Saltow's been added to the squad. They're just trying to see if they can use a woman at this stage, but they're not sure. I want to talk about walking just for a second, just because I just want to ask you the basic question. Did you walk when you played?
It depended on how beneficial it was. I mean, the same as anybody. You know, if I nicked you the second slip, I walked off. If I absolutely smashed a bat pad, I walked off. If I had any inkling that I might get away with it, I stood there. no different to anybody else or anything that happened in that last Test match. I think three players in the Test match stood. The two that got given out were because one team isn't very good at using the referral system, and the one bloke who managed to stay in was playing for the team that was very good at the referral system. Simple.
It's interesting though. It was only Bairstow, I think, that I can remember in the game that really walked.
Yeah.
But what was interesting about that is it happened on the same day with Broad, and it didn't seem to, look, I'm from Melbourne. I was taught that if you even hinted at walking, I remember there was one time in my life where I nicked to the keeper and I took half the step and then I stood there and the umpire saw the half the step and gave me out. And I remember walking off and my teammates just being like, why the hell would you do that? And that was the closest I ever got to walking, was an instinctive half a step.
Yeah.
And that was how I was brought up. But it's amazing how many people think in this day and age, especially when, like, let's say it was Eddie Cowan. So he's sick. He's got Usman Khawaja right behind him. He's got David Warner right behind him.
Yeah.
He's vomiting his whole life. If he nicks a ball to the keeper right at the moment, that could be the end of his career. Why would you want to walk?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, put it this: England batting last in the Test match. England need 2 to win with 1 wicket left. Stuart Broad nicks one to the keeper. Do you expect him to walk off? Are you kidding me? I mean, I keep using this quote because it's a belter. It was Ian Chappell, wasn't it? It was captain of Australia. His great quote about the only time you walk is when your car runs out of petrol. I mean, that's the rules, and Australia pretty much made them up. One of the funny things about being English, I guess, is that maybe the casual supporter, or maybe the person that's watched it since 1934, still sort of believes very much that that there is a code of honour that's greater than the sort of winning and the losing of the game, and that you should always walk off. Well, I've got news for you chaps. It's not going to happen, and it hasn't happened for a very, very long time. And Stuart Broad is in the eye of this storm pretty much because people in general don't like Stuart Broad very much. He's got he's one of those players that people like to have they feel he's got a bit of an attitude problem, and they like to try and take him down a peg or two, which is why he got an enormous amount of stick for it. But Michael Clarke was allowed to get away with the excuse that he wasn't sure.
It was funny,
because people like Michael Clarke, so that's fine. He can say I'm not sure.
But in Australia, Michael Clarke would have got all the stick, and Stuart Broad probably would have got away with it. So, but it is interesting. But the funny thing is that I'm not 100%. I don't think Michael Clarke is the same as Broad's, just because there's a difference, the amount of bat that they both got on them.
No.
But they both thought, they both clearly knew they hit it, because
correct.
Michael Clarke's.
But what difference does it make? It makes no difference.
No, it does, because you and I both know you can nick a ball and not know it.
No, you do no bollocks.
Come on, I've seen people do it. I've seen batsmen.
I played for 20 years, and I always knew if I nicked it. Always.
Why do batsmen refer them?
Because they know that if it's a real faint one, sometimes the DRS doesn't pick it up. I refer you back to Ian Bell at the SCG in 2011. He got away with one. He knew he nicked it, but it was so faint he thought he'd take a chance with the technology. The technology didn't show up the hotspot, and therefore he survived. That's why Michael Clarke referred it. That's why Brad Haddin referred it. Simple, I'm not having it, because if you say you're not sure, does that mean you're not sure whether you've hit it or not sure whether you didn't hit it? I'm not sure doesn't work. You can either say no, I didn't, or yes, I did. There's no not sure.
So you're saying at no stage in your life were you convinced? Because I've had times when I've been batting and I thought I didn't hit it, and I was so convinced by the opposition that I was like, maybe I have. I couldn't even tell in the end.
No, you always knew. Put it this way: if I had to think about whether I thought I had or not, then I pretty much took it that meant I had. Didn't mean I walked off. I'm not going to sit here and say I walked off. But the faint ones, because there's a tiny little bit of something that you feel. Yeah. And Michael Clarke, for sure. First of all, it was, oh crikey, did it carry? He jackknifed his head round, did it carry? He was thinking, oh, I've got away with this because the umpires are going to go and have a look, so maybe I've got away with it on the catch. And then it was kind of like, the team really needs me here. I'm gonna take a chance on the referral, take a chance on it not showing up on the DRS, and see if I get away with it. I will not have it for 1 second that he didn't know he hit that ball.
I know, I agree with you there because, like I said, him and Haddon both. I mean, they both
Yeah.
got neck injuries now from turning around.
Hadden himself said he hit it. He admitted,
Um,
he admitted that he hit it.
well, I mean, he said it while the referral was going on. He was clearly telling Jimmy Pattinson he hit it right at that
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah, so I mean, to me, there isn't any difference. I mean, Stuart Broad, the one thing in Stuart Broad's favour was that the ball hit Haddon's gloves as well.
yeah,
So there was that kind of, if you're looking at it in 2D from where the umpire's standing, there's that kind of, Christ, it's hit. I know it's hit stuff, but I'm not sure what it's hit. And the deflection went to, through to Michael Clark. If Haddon had caught it, it probably would have been out. Stuart probably would have walked off. But there was that extra little bit of visual kind of confusion, and Broady's acting was awesome.
oh yeah, you have to give it to him for
Yeah.
that. I think I tweeted straight away. I've got newfound respect for Stuart Broad because I mean that the difference is, I suppose, in the acting. Because if you've got a very tiny nick, not everyone in the ground knows about it. Whereas I think with Broads, what you're saying is right, that because it hit the glove, it could have looked to an umpire like it just hit the glove and went to slip.
Yeah.
But still, the balls to be able to sit there at that point and just sort of say, I definitely didn't hit it when when at that point. I like that. That's my kind of cricket.
Yeah, I mean that's the Aussie way. I mean, the Australian's gone soft all of a sudden. Though, as I tell you, there's another thing that's interesting. I was watching when that actually happened. I was at a golf club up the road, in the bar, just come in, and they had the big screen on, but they had no sound on, right? So nobody could really be sure what was going on. And in the end, the general consensus, even with all the replays in the bar without sound, was that the ball had hit the keeper's gloves. Isn't that amazing? It hit the keeper's gloves. Christ, I thought he nicked it. So without sound, without the sort of like the being guided one way or another by the commentary and by what people are saying, the people in that bar at that time thought that there was nothing wrong with it. It was obviously only later when they picked up the paper the next day or saw the highlights later on in the evening that they realised what had gone on. So it's interesting the way that the what people say and what commentators say and what how the media sort of represents it can sort of colour people's opinions, because there were 40 people in that bar and all of them thought that the ball had come off the keeper's glove. Would you believe?
What's interesting about that is George brought it up yesterday that there were actual chief sports writers, and it was mostly the chief sports writers who were the most annoyed, because the cricket writers are just like, this is what happens in modern cricket, shut the hell up. But the chief sports writers, they're that generation of old romantics who only come into cricket for big tournaments. And
the Ashes,
they don't even know Bangladesh is, playing Test cricket. Probably some of them. There was a few of them that were writing about the fact that the edge that Broad got went straight to slip. They actually skipped the bit where it hit the glove.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I mean, could you imagine though I would have converted to Stuart Broad as a religion. If he actually nicked the
and he stood there straight to slip. I've seen it before. I've seen batsmen. Go to county cricket. I've seen batsmen who are in the middle of like a terrible run of form. The county games are kind of coming thick and fast. You can bat 3 times over a weekend. It's a bloke go 0-0-0 in the space of 4 days. Come to the next one, nick it to second slip and stand there. The guy is just so mentally kind of, his brain has completely gone and he's not scoring any runs and he wants to kill himself. He nick it to second slip, stand there, and I can picture it happening actually, and I know exactly who it was, but I'm not going to mention his name. And have to be sent on his way, with the ball landing in second slip's hand.
Let's be honest, he never failed 3 times in a row, so it probably wasn't him.
No, this was a long while back, Mike.
I want to ask sort of a philosophical question here, based on comments from Switch It yesterday. So there was someone who said in the comment section, everyone's talking up Australia, but isn't it true that England had a bad game? But I suppose what I would throw onto that is, did England have a bad game because they've had a lot of bad games over recent times and they're not as good as they used to be, and also because the Australian bowlers sort of forced them into playing the way they did?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of truth in everything that's come out of that. Everything you said. England played to about 70% of potential, I think, in the Test match. And game should have been over by Saturday, shouldn't it? I think, again, another sort of DRS controversy. If Agar had been given out stumped, which I firmly believe to this day that he was short of his ground in that stumping on 6, then England had 100 run lead, and the Test match wouldn't have been anything like what we ended up seeing on Sunday. So you can be bloody thankful for that, because it was incredibly entertaining. So yeah, Australia. I think Australia was just fortunate to be in the game. I think they were very fortunate to be in a position where they could take it as close as they did. England will play better. They will certainly bat better than they did at Trent Bridge, and I'm a little bit doubtful as to whether or not Australia will have a better chance of beating them at Lords. Anyway, I'm not sure about the rest of them, but at Lords, I think England will be too strong.
Because considering the way Australia batted, though, as well, I mean, as bad as I think the Australian batting lineup can be, I don't think I don't think Clark's ever going to fail twice again.
No. I mean, I wonder how bad his back is, Jared. I mean, obviously, again, the corporation won't allow any sort of bad news to come out about it, but I just get the feeling that he's just struggling with it constantly, and that it's a real problem for him. He will bat better. He will score runs in the series. I've got no doubt about it. But you couple that with the fact that I think he's struggling with his back, the fact that he feels that he has got to score the bulk of the runs every innings, every time, if Australia are going to be in the series. That he's got problems with Watson as well, as we know. That there's just so much going on for him at the moment, and he could do with a bit of help. He could do with somebody. Chris Rogers looks like a man who could very easily, if I was going to put money on the first Australian to score 100 in the series, it'd be him. Bang at Lords, he played there for many years with Middlesex. I think he's a very, very fine player. And if anyone in that Australian lineup's going to make a century this week, it would be him.
I will say about Michael Clarke that one of the great things is how close you are to the SIPS cord in the Trent Bridge press box, and he spent most of his time touching his back, stretching his back, turning around, doing, and as a man with a lower back problem myself, I saw a lot of my stretchers coming out. So I'm pretty sure he's not 100% fit. Well, how fit he is, I don't know, and also I don't think he plays Jimmy very well.
No, well, I mean, the one thing about Michael Clarke, the one flaw I would say, the one thing that makes him brilliant and is a flaw in equal measure, is the fact that he's always kind of playing with his hands out in front of himself. He's always going to meet the ball, and a bowler that can move the ball as late as Jimmy Anderson just loves that type of player, because you feel like you're always in with a chance of going past inside or outside edge. So. That's going to be a contest that will be thrilling to watch unfold as well.
And I've got one last question for you. So, based on what we saw in the first test, do you believe in the cult of Darren Lehmann?
What I believe is that a coach can't make an average team a great team, and I don't think that's ever happened. But what I believe is that with a guy that they can all sort of relate to, and a guy that has sort of Australian values, and a guy that will try and simplify things as much as possible, the reason that they stayed in that game at Trent Bridge as much as they did was because they're together more. There's more of a kind of belief that we're heading in a direction that we all understand and all believe in, which makes them a tougher team to beat. It doesn't make them a better team, but it will make them hang in there longer than they might have done under Mickey Arthur.
By saying he's got Australian values, I'm going to assume that you're anti-Mickey Arthur, being South African. You look at you. You're English and Jamaican, and you've got roots in Southern Africa. And you sound like Shane Warne.
No, mate, it's a cultural thing. I think one of the criticisms that I'm sure you would have levelled as an esteemed journalist yourself would have levelled at South African teams over the years is that they're kind of robotic, by the book, by numbers a little bit, lacking in a bit of inspiration, lacking in that sort of individual spark. That would have been the one thing that you would always level at South Africa as against why, with the players that they had, were they not as successful as Australia in the same period. That would have been, it might have been lazy, it might have been a lazy generalisation, but that would have been the essence of the argument. Am I right?
Yeah.
So, and then you put a guy like Mickey Arthur, whose background is very much in, PowerPoint presentations, getting things written on graphs, forms and extras, and you throw him into an Australian team who've always believed in this kind of, you bat, we bowl, we feel well, we go out on the piss. That game done. Very very
Yeah.
simple. You put a guy like that in with guys like them, and it doesn't work. Well, who'd have bloody thought that? Amazing.
I will say this though, that if you look at the current teams, it's been England who've been playing like robots for a long time now, and it was the most amazing thing. And I'm writing a massive piece about this, so I don't want to ruin too much of my ace material. But I will say this: that when Agar came out, it was quite clear that they had no idea how to bowl to someone that they didn't have a bunch of analysis on.
Yeah. Hey, look, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's funny because obviously the South African English connection it runs deep and runs on forever. But the English are kind of much happier, I think, being sort of told what to do and being guided in that way. They don't trust their instincts as much as the Aussies do. I mean, this is the essence of the Aussie English battle, isn't it? That you've got on the one hand the kind of like the sort of staid, choreographed, sort of principled, this is the way it should be done, and then on the other hand you've got the sod all that, we're just going to go out and have a ball and see what happens. That's the essence of the Pommy Aussie sort of battle. And so the English, we've had Duncan Fletcher, you've got Andy Flower, both pretty conservative guys. The English quite like that. They like to be told what to do and when to do it and what to wear and how you're going to do this and how you're going to do that. So it works for England. It doesn't work for Australia.
Beautiful. Mark, thank you very much.
No problem.